I want to take just a moment to point out while Mr. John Browning is out of the room that he volunteered to buy everyone's dinner tonight. So afterwards, please thank him for his kindness and generosity. So it's my understanding that Kim Daly, Kim Reavers, and Dennis Jones were here the prior month. And I'm just going to tell you that's going to be an extremely tough act for me to follow. Those are three of our getting some instructions. Pick the mic up a little here. Is that better? Okay. Those are three of our shining stars at the agency, and really the some of the cornerstones that of which a good solid foundation at the office is built on. They're certainly an asset, and we couldn't do what we do without the three of them. Of course, Kim and Kim, or the two Kims as we affectionately refer to them, are victims advocates. And Dennis Jones is our community service deputy, among other things. He also runs our Marine unit and any number of other tasks that we task him with. So the things that Barb asked me to talk on, I'd like to expound on those a little more. But before we do that, I'd like to just kind of take you through a year in review from 2017 and give you some give you some of our accomplishments, just so you kind of have an idea of where we came from versus where we are now, and then we'll touch on the opioid epidemic and a number of other issues that we're facing this coming year. Folks, to be blunt with you, whenever I took over January 3rd, I took over an agency that was in crisis. The sheriff's office was critically short, not only in patrol, but also in communications and in the jail. Our communications center staffing was at a little over 50%. We were over 12 short in patrol. And just to put that into context, that is one entire patrol shift for us. So we were running at 75% capacity in patrol, 50% capacity in communications, and at about 65 to 70% of our workforce in our jail. We have made leaps and bounds as far as improvements are concerned in those areas, and I'll take you through some of those as I go through this presentation. But as Barb alluded to, I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have questions along the way, please feel free to raise your hand, interrupt me, throw a piece of ice at me, buy John a drink for his generosity and paying for everyone's meals tonight. No, honestly though, we faced a daunting task of turning around an agency, like I said, that was in complete crisis, in my humble opinion. And I can't take all the credit for all of our successes. I was fortunate enough to be able to surround myself with a very talented staff that has really put their nose to the grind and done a fantastic job, in my opinion, of turning the agency around. So just to talk about staffing levels for just a moment, since that's where we kind of started this conversation. As it stands today, we have 0 positions to hire against in patrol, which means we are completely full, which also means that you should see an increased presence of green and white patrol cars in your respective neighborhoods. Jail staffing is up to about 90 to 95%. We're still just not quite where we want to be. We haven't quite reached our goal there, but we're steadily making progress. And again, I owe it all to my staff I have to give them credit for all the wonderful things that they've done. And in our communications center, we're still running critically short there, but I can tell you that that's not a problem that is endemic to Putnam County. That's a problem that we're facing statewide. And it's not necessarily an issue of money, but the reality of it is I think a lot of it has to do with a generation of millennials that we're trying to employ, be that what it may. So our staffing levels in our communications center are running at about 75% right now. Still not quite where we want to be, but significantly better than what we were a year ago, and we're in a much better position to offer services to the citizens of Putnam County. Some of the ways that we were able to accomplish this, and that's, in my opinion, that's probably one of our greatest accomplishments in this last year, was getting our staffing levels back up and righting the ship, so to speak, if you will, because quite frankly, we were sinking and no one had any fingers to plug any additional holes. So what we did whenever I first took office was we conducted an agency-wide meeting, and throughout a series of meetings that we hosted at St. Johns River Community College, met with every single employee and heard from them exactly what some of the issues were, some of the problems that they were facing, and let them know that we stood behind them and gave them an opportunity to speak freely with us, to share their concerns, and that has really paid some big dividends. And there's some smaller things that I'll go through in here that you might not think are significant, but have really played a big factor in helping us get those drive down our recidivism rate and keep our staffing levels where they are now. Currently, whenever I started at the sheriff's office about 19 years ago, 18 and a half, 19 years ago, we got paid once a month. And that might not sound too bad to some of you in here, but whenever I started as a deputy sheriff, we were making about $17,000 a year. So you divide that by 12, do the math, and it's tough to make ends meet. Rusty, as many of you know, worked at the sheriff's office for a number of years, and I'm certain that she can attest to that. It took some creative budgeting. So much to the chagrin of my finance director, I gave her a directive that we were going to buy monthly pay, and that, not surprisingly, had a significant impact on morale throughout the agency, as simple as it may seem. Additionally, with the cooperation from the county commission and from some reconfiguration of our budget based on a jail medical contract, we were able to give our employees a significant pay increase. The day that I took office, our deputies started out at $29,120 a year. And while to some that might sound like a respectable paycheck, for these guys to go out and put their lives at risk every day, it's pennies on the dollar of what we should be paying them. Not to mention, we're competing with some of the surrounding counties that pay substantially more. But I tell you what we've realized is that you can pay someone as much money as you want. And I think Napoleon said it, but is this working okay? Can you hear me okay? Sounds like it's going in and out. Okay. I think Napoleon said it best when he said that men work not for silver or gold, but for small trinkets of ribbon that they place on their uniforms. So what we've realized is that by recognizing excellence in service at the sheriff's office is that we get a much better quality employee. We were also able to, for the first time in the history of the agency, put together and roll out a step pay program. So there's some incentive for these guys and gals, to stick around long term. The average time and grade at the sheriff's office in patrol when I took over in January of 2017, was 11 months. So what does that mean to you? That means that the guy that was coming to answer your alarm call or whatever problem, your prowler that you had at night, had an average of 11 months on the road. Today, through some rehires that we're actually able to make and hire some folks back from some surrounding agencies that had left us for greener pastures, if you will, and some other hires that we're actually able to make with experience, that number is now at 3 years and 6 months. Additionally, we, with the help of the county commission, then Commissioner Goddard, now Chairman Goddard, we were able to partner with them. Some of you may or may not know this, but I'm extremely fiscally conservative, and I was very proud to say at the end of this last fiscal year we were able to return $1.2 million back to the county. Of that, the county commission was gracious enough to roll $400,000 of that 1.2 million back into our employees' pockets to help offset the rising cost of insurance premiums that they were faced with paying. Additionally, we also created a functional policy review and advisory committee who were charged with the responsibility of identifying and reviewing policies on an annual and semi-annual basis to ensure that we were in compliance with nationally recognized best practices and accreditation standards that we're required to meet. You also may have seen in the newspaper that we were able to create a sex offender specialist, and we did so by reducing an administrative position. I'm not sure how you folks feel about it, but I don't like the fact that we have an inordinately high number of sexual predators and offenders living in and among us. And while we might not be able to go knock on their doors and demand that they leave, we can certainly make this place as inhospitable as we can for them. And one of the ways that we do that is frequent compliance checks to ensure that they're following their stipulations of their probation and doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. I also reorganized our Department of Administration and reduced one of our senior level captain's leadership positions, which afforded us an opportunity to not only put some additional money in our guys' pockets, but also facilitated the creation of our agricultural deputy that you may have seen released in the paper in the last several months. I see this as a significant win for us. Donnie Jordan is our ag deputy and does a great job maintaining an open line of communication for our farmers and all of our agribusiness partners within the county. Any questions so far? I know I've covered a lot of information. Yes, ma'am.
It's not really a question, but it's more of a kudos than anything else. We're from Crescent City, and I really enjoy seeing the front page constantly being covered with the rest. Because that means that you're no longer walking around in the light of day going like this.
We're going to talk a little bit more about arrest in just a second, and I apologize. I didn't bring enough copies. I actually have some UCR or Uniform Crime Reporting information from 2017 that has not yet been released to the public that I'd like to share with you, but I think you'll find the results rather impressive, or I did anyway. Anyway, I digress. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Also, something new to the agency that I introduced was weekly leadership meetings. This is a meeting that's comprised of our senior level leadership team, and it's an opportunity for us to get together on a Monday morning, brainstorm, identify problems that occurred over the weekend, and come up with solutions. Something that also came out of those weekly meetings is we now hold a monthly accountability meeting. Alex has been in some of those, and he can tell you that they're not always the most pleasant, because that's our opportunity to have the district commander come up, go over the crime statistics for his respective area, and offer any solutions and or explanations for crime trends, good, bad, or indifferent. You may also know that we have increased our presence on social media significantly. Some of you that follow us on Facebook. Love it or hate it, Facebook and social media is here to stay. And what we've realized is that it's an extremely effective way to communicate with our residents here. Currently, our Facebook page has over almost 22,000 followers. That number grows daily. Just to put it in perspective, whenever we took office, I think we had a little over 10,000 followers on Facebook. So obviously we're pushing out some information that people find timely and interesting. Along the way of community engagement, my philosophy towards policing has always been that we become most effective as law enforcement officers whenever we become members of the community and partner with members of the community. So in that vein, I issued a directive to all of our leadership staff that from our most rookie deputy right on up to the sheriff, that we would be involved in as many community events as we could. And at the close of the last calendar year, for 2017, we had attended over 425 documented community engagement events. Everything from children's birthday parties to events such as this tonight. We also went through a complete rework of our youth resource deputy program and got them much more involved in our students' daily lives. I spent some time myself as a school resource officer, and what I realized through my time there and through research that I'd done over the years is that if we don't make a positive impact in an at-risk child's life by the time they're in the 3rd grade, we've already lost them. We've lost the battle. So what we've done is we've actually partnered our youth resource deputies with our police athletic league, and they participate in a number of different events. Our youth resource deputies also partner with the Florida Sheriff's Association and attend the summer camps that they sponsor. And just on a side note, to chase a rabbit down a tangential side trail, hopefully this summer for the first time, we will offer a mobile Florida Sheriff's Ranches youth camp here in Florida, or here in Putnam County for the first time ever. Any questions so far? Yes, sir.
In your year in office, what opportunities have been made available to the community to volunteer in support of your department?
You know, we actually have a number of volunteers. We have 245 full-time employees, and if we include part-timers and volunteers, that makes us about 308 strong. We are always looking for volunteers. There's opportunities for folks to come on as public service assistants. We see a number of folks that have interest in the program, and they are some of our biggest assets as far as I'm concerned. Yes, sir.
Along that same vein, how about the Seniors versus Crime? Is that program going strong? Can you update me on that?
Yes, I certainly can. Whenever I took office, Seniors versus Crimes, the interest in it had waned. Quite frankly, I'll just be blunt with all of you. We didn't have a buy-in from the previous administration. We have re-engaged with Seniors versus Crimes, and rather than put them in some obscure little office over in the corner somewhere, we've actually invited them into the main building, and they share an office with our duty officer now, so they have an even increased exposure from what they did previously. So we are reconnected and re-energized with Seniors versus Crimes, and really seeing some big dividends from that program here in our county. Just a few other things to note. We were actually also awarded a Police Athletic League mentoring grant to start a mentoring program. And this is basically a program that allows our current Police Athletic League members and participants to actually go out and mentor at-risk youths in the community. That program is still in its infancy, but I'm certain will pay us some big dividends in the future. Recently, just within the last 2 months, through a partnership with the school district at our Juvenile Crime Prevention Office, we were actually able to install and set up, a computer lab for tutoring. And this is a top-notch facility. It's actually over at our Juvenile Crime Prevention Office over in East Palatka, and it gives the students the opportunity to come in and spend some one-on-one time with a qualified instructor. They can take lessons on the computer. And the beautiful thing about it is we have the ability to monitor all of their activities remotely, so we can make certain that they're doing the right things. We spoke briefly about our Ag Deputy program. One of the things that is at the forefront of my mind is some of the mental health issues that we're facing, not only in our jail, but also veterans that suffer from ailments such as post-traumatic stress disorder and any number of mental problems that we hear about on a daily basis. So through a partnership with the county and Stuart Marchman, we applied for and were awarded a grant to establish a mental health stabilization unit right here in Putnam County. And while that might not sound like a big deal, that actually takes a significant burden off of our deputies, because no longer are we having to transport juveniles, well, once the program is up and running rather, we will no longer have to transport juveniles or adults out of county for services that they need. We'll have a local facility here where we can take them, they can be triaged and then treated appropriately. Some of you may also have seen recently that we made a small investment out of our drug forfeiture account and purchased a UAV or a drone. Some people are afraid of drones and the negative connotation that goes along with you, but I'm here to tell you folks, it is one of the most powerful tools that we have at our disposal when used properly. Ever since I started, we've had a legitimate need for some type of an air asset here in Putnam County. And quite frankly, we just didn't have the dollars to make it happen. And when you look at maintenance cost on a helicopter and operational cost, you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 to $700 an hour, depending on which type of aircraft you're operating. And obviously that's just cost prohibitive for a small, fiscally constrained county. So what we were actually able to do was make a small expenditure out of our drug forfeiture account, purchase a UAV that does the exact same thing and even has some capabilities that a traditional aviation asset doesn't. Obviously, it should come as no surprise that anyone who has a lick of common sense would never dream of sending a helicopter into an area where there was active gunfire. I can tell you folks, I have no aversion flying that drone right in there and getting us a bird's eye view of that suspect. We've had a number of successes with it already, locating some children and some elderly Alzheimer's patients, and it's really been a worthwhile investment for us. Something else that's actually of note too, Chairman Goddard actually heard a little bit about this at the County Commission meeting today. We awarded some deputies the Sheriff's Commendation Medal for a pursuit that they were involved in. There's been some recent changes in the last couple of years to Florida statutes that have to deal with vehicle pursuits and liability. So whenever I took office, I'd given my staff some very clear instruction that we were to mirror our policy with regard to pursuits to mirror the state statutes. And essentially what that says is that the only legitimate reason we have to chase someone is for a forcible felony, robbery, home invasion, homicide, something like that. So as part of that, I made it very clear that if we were going to engage in pursuits, we would end them as quickly as possible. And we're actually now in the process of training all of our deputies in a technique called the PIT, or Precision Immobilization Technique. And that's what you see whenever you see on TV, where they go up and a patrol car very gently nudges the car over into the other lane and basically spins them out. It's a wonderful tool that we now have at our disposal and was recently employed shortly after we sent 3 of our most qualified driving instructors to a pit school in Jacksonville. It was just fortuitous the day prior they had been, and the very following day got to use it, and we had a great result. We actually were able to apprehend an armed robbery suspect without any injury to them or to the deputies. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yes, ma'am. We do have a ride-along program. We always have. we encourage citizens to come and ride with us at any time. Okay, I'll talk just a little bit about some of our goals for the future, and something that has a special place in my heart. One of our members of our leadership team actually discovered a program through the Guardian Ad Litem's office, and it's called the Keys to Independence. And basically what it is a mentoring program for youths that are victims of crimes, under the supervision of the Guardian Ad Litem office. It's taken a significant amount of effort on our part to get this program up and running, but essentially what it does is it gives us the opportunity to coach some of these young men and women who don't otherwise have a positive role model in their life how to drive a car. So we've actually had the good fortune to partner with a local vendor here who has provided us with 2 vehicles through negotiated agreements with 2 of the large automobile manufacturers. And I expect that we'll have that program up and running within the next 2 months. So I think that's certainly a big win for us. One thing that I did want to touch on, and I apologize, I did not make enough copies of this document. So I'll give you everything that I can and ask you to share them with your neighbor.
Sheriff, permission to say something while
Certainly.
you're handing those out? I don't, generally speaking, you're judged by your peers. I'll wait. I'll still wait. Generally speaking, you're judged by your peers, and Sheriff DeLoach's peers are the other 67 sheriffs that are in the state of Florida. And last week, was it last week, sir? Maybe 10 days ago, we had an opportunity. They have these annual association meetings where all the sheriffs get together and they talk about the problems they're having in the state. And Sheriff DeLoach's peers gave him something that I thought was very incredible for a first-time sheriff. They awarded him, and we're talking about every other sheriff in the state of Florida, men that have been in office 3, 4, maybe even 5 terms before. They awarded Sheriff DeLoach the David C. Hobbs Leadership Award. And to me, that was just an incredible thing. If you want to know what kind of caliber sheriff that you have in his first year, for every other sheriff in the state of Florida to vote him the leader of the year, this is the example right here.
Thank you, Alex. So if I may, I apologize again that I didn't bring enough copies, but there's actually 2 documents that you should have in front of you now. One of which is a spreadsheet that's titled Statistical Crime Data Agency-Wide. Now, bear in mind, these are crime statistics for the unincorporated areas of Palatka. The Palatka Police Department and all the other municipalities that have law enforcement agencies within their respective municipalities are responsible for submitting their own UCR data. So I'll share ours with you and then share some information with you about some of the other municipalities. So you'll see as you go through here that we have had a rather significant reduction in almost every category of crime. But what's most important is the other document that's titled UCR Checklist Unverified Data for Review and Verification. This data, unlike what the document says, has been reviewed and verified and submitted to the state, who then in turn submits it to the FBI. And bear with me, please. This print is small. I left my glasses in my vehicle, so I'm going to do my best to direct you through some of these sections and point out some significant statistics. So if you look at this very first block, under where it says property offenses, if you go down, there's a double line, and over on the left-hand side, if you see total index offenses, and then you go all the way over to the right, the far column, we have seen an overall net decrease in crime from 2016 to 2017 of 19.5%. Now, there's another very telling number that I want to bring your attention to on this page as well. If you go all the way down to the bottom under where you see arrest, that is 4 sections down, all the way over onto the right-hand side of the column, you will see that there has been a significant reduction in the number of arrests with all of what we call Part 1 UCR crimes. So Part 1 UCR crimes are exactly what you see here. It's murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle theft. But there's a number that sticks out here that I want to bring your attention to. And if you look just below motor vehicle theft under arrest, you'll see a category for Part 2 crimes. Part 2 crimes are your vice crimes, drug offenses, criminal mischief, what I like to refer to as quality of life issues that affect our daily lives in our neighborhoods. And what you'll see is that from 2016 to 2017, we had a 35.4% increase in arrest for these quality of life crimes. And as a direct result of that and those efforts of those guys in those green and white cars that keep us safe every night, that, ladies and gentlemen, is what has driven that number down significantly. That's why we have an almost 20% reduction in crime this year. And I'm very pleased to share all that with you. Please keep that close to your hat. This information has not even been released from the agency or to the media yet. I wanted to share it all with you because quite frankly, I'm very pleased and excited about it. And it's been my distinct pleasure to share it with you here tonight.
I would like to thank you, bottom of my heart, for all these wonderful numbers. I also would like a favor from us. Take a big enough circle where actually the data is.
Oh my goodness, don't hold that against me.
I won't. That's my husband, right there. Like born and bred. He has this really misguided sense that when he was little, you left your windows open, you left your doors open, you left the keys in the car. Could you please tell him that despite these awesome numbers, you can't do that anymore?
Yes, you can.
You know, I still consider myself a young man by anyone's standards, but I too grew up here. My family's been here for 5 generations now. And, you know, I never hesitated to sleep with the window up or to leave our doors unlocked. Unfortunately, we just live in a different time now. You've probably seen some of the campaigns that we've sent out on social media and the signboards that we're putting up in problem areas. Folks, I can remember 5 or 6 years ago when we were having burglaries in the triple digits throughout the county every month. You know, it was not uncommon for us to report 120, 130 burglaries a month. We've driven that number down so far that most months in each of our respective districts, we're in single digits for burglaries. I get panicked if we have, a rash of burglaries in a district is 2 or 3 to me. But the reality of it is the common burglar and the common thief and victims of burglaries are all victims of crimes of opportunity. I can show you case after case after case. I dare say, and I could back this up statistically, at least 95% of the burglaries that we have are vehicle burglaries where there is no forced entry, or residential burglaries where there's no forced entry, where someone has inadvertently left their vehicle unlocked or inadvertently forgotten to lock their home. I can tell you because I've watched it with my own eyes doing surveillance, watching young adults and burglars come into a neighborhood at night and they go through and systematically lift door handles. If they find one unlocked, they'll pilfer through the car, take what they can, but almost every time, unless there's something in there specific they're targeting, if they go to a vehicle and they pull up the door handle and it's locked, they move right on, because the last thing that they want to do is to draw attention to themselves. So protect yourself, protect your valuables, and lock your doors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Listen, it was my distinct pleasure to come and spend some time with you here tonight. I hope I get another opportunity in the future, and I hope I didn't bore you too badly. Thank you so much.